In the middle of a summer with heat records and forest fires, the British Tories are more afraid of losing power than of the climate catastrophe. But their economy demands clarity. And on Monday of last week, many readers of the London Times must have rubbed their eyes. The venerable daily newspaper reported on its front page that the governing Conservatives are questioning their climate goals in order to remain in power. Next to it, a cover photo showed British tourists in slippers fleeing climate change-induced forest fires on the Greek island of Rhodes. Psychologists have dubbed the uncomfortable emotional state many Britons must have felt at this incongruous news story as cognitive dissonance. Politically, the Tories' climate change tactics in the elections have sparked national dissonance over Britain's climate neutrality timetable. And Conservative MPs are openly calling for a departure from the previous goals, and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak does not seem averse. And the Tories take it as a reason that they have an explanation for the unexpected success in the UK's recent by-election. It is said to have been due to the opposition to stricter environmental standards. But could this become a strategy for the next election campaign now? There indeed was great joy when the Conservatives were able to defend at least one of the three constituencies in the by-election last week. And Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said in Uxbridge near London that nobody accepted the Tories to win there. The Conservatives had to reckon with the worst. That means 3 defeats in the 3 constituencies where by-elections were pending. But things turned out quite differently. Quite surprisingly, the Conservative candidate won the majority in Uxbridge near London. It was ultra-thin, but still, and the analyses all went in the same direction. Uxbridge will soon be part of the London environmental zone. And for many, that means restrictions on older cars, and those who commute have to think about a new car. And because this policy is currently being promoted by Labor Mayor Sadiq Khan, the interpretation is that the election was the lesson to be learned. Since then, Conservative politicians have been testing how much hope they can draw from this development for the general parliamentary elections in 2024. Softening environmental and climate goals and being elected for them, that's the calculation. But does the Prime Minister still support the government's goal of reducing carbon dioxide emissions to 0 by 2050? We are making progress towards carbon neutrality, said Sunak. Things are going better here than in many other countries. But what is also clear is that we will not incur any unnecessary additional costs for families, he said. That's a clear, loud commitment to the climate goals. No more CO2 emissions by 2050. No, it wasn't. That would have sounded differently. And Building Secretary Michael Gove was much more critical, warning last weekend that environmental protection should not become a religious campaign. And a government study says because of the higher temperatures in winter, there are fewer deaths from the cold. And that's why there are no more heat deaths in Great Britain. This calculation is rather unusual given the pictures from Greece, Spain and southern Italy, which are dominating UK coverage right now. British holidaymakers have to be flown out because forests are on fire in Rhodes and elsewhere. And alongside the news from around the Mediterranean, numerous newspapers are reporting on the government plans for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to relax recycling rules for the industry in order to cut costs and curb inflation. Because of the tense situation on the real estate markets, homeowners are to be relieved of the CO2 saving targets. The rules for documenting the energy requirements of buildings are to be relaxed. And Great Britain, as it seems, must be already in the election campaign. The Conservative Party's chances of winning the next election in Great Britain are currently quite slim. According to a recent YouGov poll, the Conservatives have only a 29% approval rating, while the Labour Party has 42%. That's an 11% drop for the Conservatives and a 12% increase for the Labour Party since the last election in 2019. And the Conservatives are plagued by a range of issues, including the cost of living crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Partygate scandal. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson resigned in June 22 after being criticized for his involvement in illegal parties during the pandemic. And the new Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has gotten off to a good start, but his popularity has plummeted in recent weeks and months as the cost of living crisis deepens. The Labour Party has surged in popularity since the arrival of new party leader Keir Starmer in 2020. Starmer is seen as an experienced politician who is perceived by many as competent and trustworthy. He has a strong focus on the cost of living crisis and has promised to cut taxes and increase public spending. It is, of course, too early to say whether the Labour Party will be able to defeat the Conservatives in the next election. However, the polls suggest that they are currently in a strong position. But there are some problems. The Labour Party has announced that if it wins the next election, it will implement Brexit, but that it will also strengthen ties with Europe. They have promised to negotiate a new trade deal with the EU that will be beneficial to the UK economy. They have also pledged to deepen cooperation with the EU in areas such as research, education, and security. And the Labour Party has also pledged to protect workers' and consumers' rights and ensure Brexit does not lead to a worsening of living conditions in the UK. I call this squaring the circle. Because the Labour Party's Brexit policy has been criticised by some as being overly conservative. However, it's praised by others as pragmatic as an approach to a difficult subject. I disagree here. Because the Labour Party's Brexit policy is problematic because it's not clear what they want to achieve. The party, as I said, has promised to implement Brexit, but it also has promised to strengthen ties with the EU. And these are two conflicting goals, and it's not clear how Labour intends to achieve them both. And the Labour Party has also promised to negotiate a new trade deal with the EU. But this will be difficult as the EU is unwilling to make special arrangements for the UK. It's possible that the Labour Party cannot reach a better trade deal with the EU than the Conservatives, and from my point of view, most likely. And the Labour Party has also pledged on the workers' and consumers' rights, as I said. This will be difficult because Brexit will lead to fewer workers' rights and less consumer protection. And the Labour Party must finally explain how it intends to solve these problems. Overall, the Labour Party Brexit policy is problematic because it's absolutely unclear what they want to achieve and how they intend to achieve those goals. So I'm as angry on Labour at the moment as I am with the Tories on the topic of Brexit. And if you want to know more on the topic of Brexit or other UK politics, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.